Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 164. Apologies, I've got a bit of a cold today, so I'll try not to spray my microphone and my screen and all that sort of stuff. And if I'll try and remember to press the cough button, but there you go. We've got a great guest for you today, who I met 4 years ago, actually, pretty much to the day at a Strong First SFG 1. I was assisting and he was a student there. But we'll introduce him in a second. As we were just explaining, we explained to all our guests. Before we introduce the guest, we have what is known in the trade as top banter. So, James, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good. I'm already suffering with some extreme DOMs in my legs from I was unwell not massively unwell, but a little bit under the weather and didn't train for about probably 10 to 12 days, and then went back to training, had my first session back yesterday. Paul McElroy just said, we'll repeat what was meant to be done last week, so I went straight in with 10 sets of squats, 10 sets of deadlifts, 10 sets of bench press. And literally before the end of the session, I could feel my thighs were aching, when you just know that's going to get worse. And then woke up this morning and could barely walk down the stairs. So I'm very, very rare. As we say, we don't train to try to elicit sort of muscle soreness, but just because I've had that kind of break from not being particularly well and just gone straight back into the program. So I'm walking gingerly today.
That's interesting though, because we spoke about that on a couple of episodes ago, didn't we? So if people want to know about that, then go back and listen to that after they've listened to this one, obviously. How about you, Paul? How are you doing? Has he frozen?
I'm good. Isn't banter classed as a microaggression now?
Your screen your picture is frozen, but we can hear you coming.
You hear me?
Are you is that venture? Paul, are you there?
I'm just practicing mindfulness and being still.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm talking. I'm waiting for you guys.
Can you please repeat your opening?
Oh, am I back again? Am I back? Am I there now?
Yeah.
Am I saying anything interesting? Am I talking to the legions of fans? Are they there? Are you guys here?
You're talking to all your fans, mate. They're all in the room with you.
They're all here. They're everywhere.
Can you please repeat?
I don't even know if you guys can hear me now.
Please, we can hear you, but please repeat your opening quip because we lost you.
Well, I was just saying, isn't banter classed as a microaggression nowadays?
Is it? I don't know.
I think so.
I don't keep up with all this stuff. I've got no idea, mate.
No.
Anyway, we don't have a HR department in health authority, do we?
Right. Anyway, we
don't have an IT department either, Paul.
No, we don't.
Let's move on.
Well, me and you do, James. We are our own IT department. Just.
I mean, I can hear you fine.
But this is the problem, you see. It's the problem with living in London because there's just no service for internet. It's a rural area. It's really tricky. But there you go. So anyway,
there's high use of the bandwidth.
Okay. Okay. Anyway. Right. So I've lost how to do this.
Let's introduce our guest, Pete.
Yes, I need to introduce our guest, don't we? Because he's been sitting through that, thinking like, "What the hell am I doing on here?" But anyway, there you go. We might cut some of that out. So like I said, I met this guy 4 years ago at a Strong First event. He's just mentioned loads of different places. So he's in Bury, Greater Manchester, and his gym's in Prestwich, I think he said.
No, gym. Well, gym's in near Prestwich, we say.
Near Prestwich, there you go. But it's Matt Roberts. How are you doing? Matt with one T as well.
Yeah, Matt, we want to see. I'm good. I'm good, mate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
marvelous.
Thanks for having me on.
Is it raining up there? Because it's usually raining up there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's horrible as normal.
Horrible is spelt with an H, isn't it? I think. But there you go. So, yeah, I heard you on. I mean, I've met you before, obviously, and I had a good chat with you at the Strong First certification. But then I listened to you on Alex Salkin, friend of the show, because he was on here as a guest.
Yeah.
And I was looking through his podcast, the Hammercast, and I saw that you were on it, and I was like, oh, that's Matt. So I listened to it, and then I was like, all right, there's a bit of your story that I didn't realize, I didn't even know anything about, and it's really interesting. And then, so like I said, when we got in touch, it was like, you know, I think that would really resonate with some of our listeners, and maybe some, like, you know, some of our listeners' kids and stuff like that, depending on what's going on out there, because it's quite a big topic, really, isn't it? So, but I mean, to kick off, you know, how did you get into kind of training and stuff like that? What was your background in that?
Well, just in school, really, it was nothing really. The background was just getting into body, like going into weight training, typical sports, rugby, athletics. Wasn't really very gifted, should we say. I just kind of got into it the age of 12, 13, as everyone does. Started reading magazines, typical like bodybuilding magazines, started weight training at school and stuff. And then obviously, do you want me to just go straight into it, or do you want me to kind of like work backwards where I am now and then work backwards from there? Do you want me to
say whatever you like,
yeah?
mate.
So obviously, started training was like 12, 13, getting into weight training at school. Then obviously later in the years at high school, like 14, 15, obviously branched off into going a bit more addictive with exercise. Wasn't really overweight as such, just more fixation on training. Obviously, different personality traits tend to go towards certain ways of with anorexia and things like that. And then obviously branched off into it. Basically, on my last year at high school, it turned into a full blown eating disorder. Got diagnosed with an eating disorder at school. Obviously, at first, you don't really know you're going through it. It's kind of like, you know, you're kind of overtraining and you want to lose weight. Weight starts plummeting. You start cutting out food. And then before you know it, obviously on my last year at school, I was clinically anorexic. So branched off into that really. And then bit of a struggle in the last years of high school. Left school, and then obviously the anorexia got full blown or out of control basically, and then basically ended up in hospital when I was 16. And then from there, went through it, basically admitted into hospital because obviously I put issues on the heart. Obviously I had an heart problem. I put issues on the joints. My body was breaking down. And then from coming out of hospital, it wasn't just a case of a quick fix. It was a couple of years of going through, coming out of it and trying to fight it kind of thing. Whilst I was going to college, I actually went to college doing art. So I was very into art and design and wanted to go down the illustration route and all that. And then obviously that was a bit of a battle, trying to do college and stuff around my studies. Kind of as I got to like, obviously I can go into more detail on areas and stuff, but as I got towards 20, I had like a little bit of a relapse, even though I kind of did come out of it and put a bit of weight on. Relapsed a little bit when I was in my 20s. And then obviously as I got further into my 20s, I basically come out of art college, couldn't really get work in that area what I wanted. So I fell more into like training because I was always into gyms, always into reading magazines and stuff. And it was like my second passion. And then from there, decided to look on nutrition, read about the body, and then took it from there. And then I ended up obviously becoming qualified as a personal trainer later on in life. Went into more strength and conditioning, got more into the studying side of it, and obviously come out of it. And then now, obviously, I've been doing it quite a while now. Kind of obviously have a gym now. We work with groups, general population. Want to get stronger and fitter, a bit more sports specific. So my one-to-ones normally range from like your sports, to working with people with eating disorders now, bulimia, anorexia, to even things like mental health issues with like bipolar, drug addiction, alcoholics, ex-alcoholics, and things like that, using exercise to get them obviously understanding of the difference of exercise and how it can help the rehab process of getting out of it. I mean, we
Can
can
I ask
dive in.
Matt? Can I ask Matt
Yeah.
how old are you now?
I'm 41 now.
So when you were kind of, it's around the age of sort of 15, I suppose, when you like you say, when you first sort of started to have anorexia and it officially diagnosed and stuff like that, around 14,
Yeah,
15,
I mean,
16. So that was about,
yeah, I mean,
that's about 25 years ago.
yeah.
Was it very, very different then? Because I mean, were you aware, were there any other people in your school or in your year that you may have be able to look at and say, well, they also had this problem? Or was it something that you were the first one or the only one in your school that had it? I mean, obviously awareness of this sort of thing is much more out there in the public now, but 25 years ago, I can't even remember back that far, at school, if there were people who may have had this thing going on back then. There's no one that jumps into my head. So how was it for you at that age 25 years ago?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was probably the only one in the year, to be honest, thinking back. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is a lot more prominent nowadays. I mean, compared to then. I mean, then it was kind of like it wasn't kind of unheard of. You're not many people. Whereas nowadays, everyone kind of knows a family member. You might know of a member in the gym, or might obviously got it or developing it. And it's basically, yeah. I mean, it was hard back in then. There was much help. Even nowadays, I mean, the support nowadays is a lot better in terms of the counsellors, the doctors. But even doctors nowadays, a lot of doctors, the average training for a doctor nowadays is, they reckon it's 4 to 5 hours within the training on eating disorders for doctors nowadays to help people with eating disorders. So it's very hard. I mean, but yeah, back then it was hard. I mean, obviously it didn't just come overnight. I started to train more. I started to get into cutting food, and then before you know it, I knew what I was doing was going wrong. I knew my temperature was dropping. I knew I was losing weight. Teachers were commenting on it. Obviously, my parents got involved at school and stuff like that, because it's not just you; it's the people who are around you as well. Like Pete mentioned, with his wife and stuff. But it is. I mean, nowadays, it's a lot more prominent. But back then, I was probably said the only one at school who had it.
And would you say sorry, Peter, I was just going to ask, I mean, we see, I suppose, in society and in the media and stuff, it's something that you tend to see a lot of, or it feels to me anyway, that there's a lot of attention around it for women and the kind of the female side of it with anorexia. As a man, or as a boy then, as a teenager then who had it, as a male, is it something, I mean, you've got vast experience of it from a personal point of view, and now you obviously do coaching around people with eating disorders and things, so have background knowledge and kind of educational knowledge around it. Is it something that is it more prominent with women and it's quite rare that men have it, or is it just that we don't really see that many men maybe publicly with it?
No, I mean, nowadays you see more guys. It's definitely rising up in the guys. I mean, I was writing a blog post the other month on it, and I think there's 20% of 20 to 25% of males now have anorexia, bulimia. I mean,
What, like
it is a
the
lot.
male population, you mean? Like
Of population, yeah,
20%?
of the population, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's 1.25 million people in the UK have anorexia, bulimia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last time I look at the statistics on it, yeah, and there's quite a lot of death rate. The death rate's pretty high. I think it's 20% of people with anorexia and bulimia die.
And
Who's got it as
how
well.
how is it? I mean, this is following on from James's question, so it's part of the answer is part of the same. But how is it classed? Like, do you have to be like super skinny, or can it be like like bodybuilders who are trying to get like super low body fat percentage and all that? Is that part
Well,
of it?
yeah, I mean, well, the doctors not. This is the problem with the doctors. Obviously, doctors sometimes only say that you're anorexic if you're underweight on the
Yeah.
scale, but actually you can be anorexic and have anorexic traits even though your weight is not that low. So even though your weight is in the normal category, you might be following certain anorexic traits and behavior patterns and over exercise and things like that, even though you're not classed as anorexic. So this is the problem where doctors are having the issue where they're not really diagnosing it. They're just saying, well, because your weight is in an ideal weight at this moment in time, you might have lost a bit of weight. You're not really turning into an eating disorder, but it is turning into an eating disorder, and it's not diagnosed properly. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot nowadays. You've not just got anorexia, you've got bulimia, you've got binge eating disorder, you've got disorderly eating. So obviously, everyone eats differently in terms of nutrition. Everyone got their own little ways of eating, but then you might get someone who's cutting out food more, loses a little bit of weight, and then they're not eating breakfast, and then they're scared about having breakfast, and then before you know it, it turns into the scared of putting weight back on, and then they're over exercising, they're going to the gym every day, they don't have a rest day. And then before you know it, it's just took over them. It just completely takes over you. So it's not something what happens overnight. It's like a switch where you might get I mean, I've had a guy once who lost weight, and he was a big guy, and then he started to take it another notch, and then another notch, and then before you know it, he couldn't get out of the gym every day. He was scared of being overweight again, and then it was turning something else. So we had to like say to this guy, listen, you're doing far too much. You're going down the wrong path here. And you've probably been across. You guys have worked with people like that now. I mean, you bound to. I mean, there's more. It's more prominent in kids now. I mean, they say that like working with counsellors and stuff and speaking to, because obviously when I'm not classified as a counsellor, I get basically when they come out of hospital and they put a bit of weight on and they're still underweight and still classed as anorexic, I will get consult with these counsellors and dietitians and stuff, and because of my background and stuff, and I've worked with people before, they will send me the person and I will kind of get them into the gym. Um, Maybe look at more performance rather than just look at like body image. It's more about getting stronger and looking at exercise for what it is, and then get them eating properly to fuel the body. And it's kind of changing the mindset on not being so. I always say it's like the restrictive mindset compared to you want to be in a performance mindset. So everyone has to be in a performance mindset, and it's more about eating for what the body needs, and obviously getting more of that urge. But obviously nowadays you've got most kids nowadays like 13, 14, 15 will develop anorexia. It will peak about 13, 14, 15 at school, and in males as well. Males are massive nowadays. I mean, there's a lot more. I know male friends that have had it and stuff. But obviously, that being said, speaking to the Priory, obviously I know a counsellor who works for the Priory, and she's had girls as young as 6 years old in the Priory, 6 and 8 years old. You've got people obviously between the ages of say 15 and 40, it's more prominent, but you have got people more in like the 70s, 60s. You've got anorexia nowadays. I had a guy once who had it for 20 years. So he had bulimia, not for 20 years. He had an eating disorder for 20 years, but then later on, further down the line, it turned into bulimia. And he had family with kids. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a girl at the. Sorry.
No, carry on. Sorry, I thought you
I've
finished.
got a girl at the minute. She's 14. She's a gymnast, and she's come to me. She's got anorexia, and at the minute we're trying to help her in terms of she is coming out of it. She's eating a little bit more, very restricted in terms of what she does. So that's the issue. When you're coming out of anorexia, because when I was coming out of it, you're scared to death of just eating a little bit more, and it's still keeping very restricted portions, and they're still kind of getting watched by the family when they eat. And obviously, sometimes you'll actually lie as well. You'll tell people you want to change, and tell people you want to come out of it, but really you don't.
I mean, in terms of, I was just going to ask, obviously, this is the kind of the physical manifestation that it kind of takes, that is this having really extreme control over what you eat and then losing weight and things. But is anorexia or bulimia or like an eating disorder something that's going on in the mind that you're then just dealing with it in this way, whereas somebody else might deal with it as going into like becoming a drug addict or an alcoholic or self-harming, or you know what I mean? Is the anorexia or the bulimia or the eating disorder really the outward manifestation of, like, obviously like a mental health problem or disorder that could, that people act it out, or it goes in different ways, if you know what I mean? It's not really about just the food, is it? I don't think.
There's loads of scenarios where people they don't really know what triggers it. It's just, it could be personality traits. So you could get someone who's very more OCD, ADHD type of person. You could get someone who they live in an environment where the family members bring them down quite a lot, and that triggers them with the behaviors to develop an eating disorder. So they want to be controlled. It's like a controlling thing. Um, there's different traits. I've had people. I mean, personally, people said to me like, "What made you do it?" And it's not like people was calling me overweight and stuff like that. It's just that I got into training. I'm very much like bit of a perfectionist. You want to be perfect, and there's no such thing as you know that. I mean, it's kind of like overdoing things, and I got into just doing a bit more sit-ups on the floor just because I wanted a six pack, and then before you know it, I was setting the alarm in the morning before my parents got up for school, and I was doing crazy amounts of sit-ups and push-ups, and it just snowballed into something else. I mean, some people, it could be a trigger of the friend says something to them, so they could call them fat, and obviously that triggers a behavior to start training. But then it's that 0 to 100 mentality, so they're not doing a moderation, they're doing it. I mean, you see this a lot with a lot of people, don't you? You see this 0 to 100 mentality where they start something and they can't find the in between. It's always 100% full on, 6 days a week, feeling like you have to diet like no tomorrow, and that triggers that. I mean, obviously, this girl, what I've got at the minute, the gymnast girl, she's 14. Obviously, she kind of had a trigger where she started to look at more body images online and look at girls using shape with six packs and this, that, and the other. But obviously, what triggered her episode was one of the coaches at gymnastics actually said she started to look like a rugby player. And obviously, that triggered it to overanalyze the body. And then before you know it, turned into something else.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there. So you said about the starting to go to the gym more and more and more. We had Maggie Elliott. Do you know Maggie? You must have met Maggie. She's around your area, around your way somewhere.
Yeah, she's up the road. She's not far up the road, I think. I've always heard, yeah.
We had her on ages ago, and she was talking about she was a rep or whatever it was for Weight Watchers, and it turned her into the person who goes to the gym for 5 hours, and she was doing every class in the gym 6 days a week. She got into the point where some foods were bad. You know, the way Weight Watchers do it is you've got your sinful foods or whatever. I don't even know how it works, but it's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And she was like, they're giving me it's given me an eating disorder. She got out of that, but she was really, really worried about it. And she didn't realize it at the time. But I was saying earlier before we started recording, I know someone from back in the day who started at school. This person was in an all-girls school, which apparently makes it more prevalent. There was there was more people in her year than there would have been, say, like you said, you're probably the only kid in your year. There was a few of her friends she knew of who were bulimic as well. And that came about, I think, from kind of things that a parent might say, you know, rather like saying like, "Oh, you're looking well and you're looking trim," or the next time you see them, they don't say anything, and then it's like, "Oh, I must have put weight on because you didn't say I look trim." So you know, and then it can be so it becomes it's like it's a mental issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like really, but then then it becomes around food and body image. So
yeah, I mean, you become very compulsive, so. It's like it's also the endorphins, and you exercise and you get the endorphin rush, and then you becomes a little bit addictive to that, and then before you know it, I mean, obviously, the problem is nowadays is when you start off as a young kid, there's not much guidance around nutrition and performance and how to eat properly with training. I mean, even at school nowadays they cover it within sports and PE and stuff, but there needs to be more about how to eat properly around exercise and sports nutrition and stuff like that. So it's not. It starts off with one thing where you'll start with one habit, and then before you know it, it just turns into a full blown eating disorder. But yeah, I mean, there needs to be a lot more help nowadays. I mean, the fact that the average doctor, like I said before, he gets like 4 or 5 hours training within the undergraduate course and stuff like that, and they just don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Do you
So how do
think
how do you help people through it now then?
But obviously, I connect with counsellors and obviously people who have helped in the past. Obviously, I've helped a couple of young people before, like 12 years old, 13, 14, guys in the 40s, a couple of people. I'm working with this girl at the minute. So what I normally do is I get them to the stage where when we're working with a counsellor team, they get referred to me, or someone might mention to me that I've helped someone, so they get put my way. When I get them in the gym, it's more about we don't want to use the exercise to fuel fat loss. So first of all, it's all about maintaining an healthy weight, so not losing weight. So that's the main thing. And then from there, it's building a healthy relationship with exercise. So we're looking at exercise for more from what it is, like getting stronger, getting a little bit fitter, but we're not doing that much in the sessions that it's creating a lot of calorie expenditure. And obviously with that, so this girl what I'm working with at the minute, we've got to read in some nutrition books about sports nutrition, understanding how the body utilizes certain foods and stuff and how to eat properly around training. And it's a building process. So first of all, it's more about gaining a relationship with a coach. So gaining a relationship with me, getting a bit more open with it. And then obviously because I've been through it myself and I kind of come out of it, I think sometimes they feel like, whereas when they speak to like counselors and stuff like that, they feel like they're kind of lying to them, even though they're not. It's the trait of anorexia. So, and believe me, you feel like everyone's kind of lying to you and they just want to make you fat and this, that, and the other. But obviously, by working with someone who's been with it, they kind of open up more. So as you start working with them after a bit, they start opening up, telling you things. Maybe the training more than what the mum and dad knows. And then obviously we're putting things into place where, like this girl at the minute, she used to be running a lot around the sessions. So we've got to stop running now. We've got to increase in the food slightly around the sessions. So her portions have gone up a little bit. She's having like a little bit more after the evening meal. So it's dead restrictive, very restrictive still, but she has started coming out of it. And it's just slowly building steps, little baby steps towards adding small habit changes in, obviously with them and getting them to open up. But it doesn't always go the case. I've had a lady before in the past who I was working with, and she was suffering from an eating disorder and she wanted to change. She was saying she wanted to change and this, that, and the other. But I found out she was training with me in the gym and we was using it more as like a counselling session with a couple of exercises, speaking more on nutrition. And then I found out she was going to another gym later on in that day, and where my friend worked, and she was exercising there. So I tried my best with that lady. And sorry to say it, but I didn't succeed with her. I had to let her go because I wasn't fueling the training to keep her weight down.
I think that's really good. It's not really good, but it's really honest, because a lot of the time people in marketing and people who are whatever they're selling, whether they're kind of a physical coach, a personal trainer, or a business coach, or a mentor, or something, we tend to, and you see on social media, and everyone just talks about the success stories, don't they? And the fact that, this is what, these people have had great results, but it's important to be honest and to say that
100%.
There are people that you don't help, that don't, for whatever reason, maybe don't gel, or it's not the right time for them, or they're not ready to change, or whatever.
Yeah.
So you cannot help every single person that you want to help, can
Exactly.
you?
Yeah. They have to want to change. They have to want to change. I mean, obviously that might take a bit of time, because when someone comes on board, they're still doing certain things, like especially with anorexia. I mean, because obviously I've been through it myself, so I kind of know certain ways what they're doing. And like a lot of the biggest trait is, one of the things is, especially as a young person and you've got a mum and dad, you're living with your mum and dad and stuff, is you exercise in your bedroom. So you start to exercise in the bedroom, you start to go off behind closed doors, exercising around the streets, and when your mum and dad doesn't know you're doing it. And obviously a lot of things, they're not being truly honest of what they're doing, amount of exercise they're doing. But yeah, I mean, it is once you're working with that person, you start to open up and they start to be honest and they start to admit that they've got a problem, because a part of the anorexia is just admitting that you've got it. So a lot of it just do not admit they've got an eating disorder. And I've worked with people in the gym. So even people who come in the gym, they've not got anorexia, they've got some kind of eating disorder trait going on. So they may be underweight, They may be skipping meals. They might overeat at the weekend, have this binge mentality, and then they come into the gym on a Monday morning and they want to really be strict all week or for the couple of days because they've fell off at the weekend and they've binged a little bit, but then they want to really eat anything for a couple of days because they feel so guilty and so anxious that they have to overtrain.
Do you think that is the number of people with eating disorders, and obviously, like you say, it could be anorexia, bulimia, disordered eating, you've even got people this, like you say, this, I'm not sure there's a specific term, isn't there, but for these people who kind of overcompensate for eating through exercise. So they're just, like you say, they just try to burn as many calories off as they can all the time. You've got people on the other end of the spectrum, I suppose, who are bigorexia and body dysmorphia, and they don't really, the numbers of people with this, is it going up, like, because of societal pressures and different things, or is it just it's more diagnosed now and people understand it more? What do you think?
Yeah, it is increasing. I mean, when I was looking at the statistics a while back when I was writing the blog, I think it was something like 35% every 5 years it's increased in terms of anorexia since the 1950s. I think it was like in the 1950s, 35% every 5 years it's increased. And obviously they reckon 25% of diets, people who are on a diet, 25% of diets turn into an anorexia or an eating disorder. So that's quite a lot. So 1 in 4 people who's following a diet will generally change into an eating disorder.
I looked up the statistic on that, and the average person will try something like 126. It's anywhere between 126 and 180 odd or something like that. I mean, it's somewhere in that ballpark, depending on what website you look at, but over the lifetime, which is bonkers, isn't it? So if 25% of people are coming out of like one of those into an eating, it's like, it's nuts.
Because the people
I
was just going to say that the people that I can think of I've been doing this for about 25 years now, and I can probably think of maybe half a dozen people really clearly that I know, that I saw kind of go from exercising to tipping over, and then to effectively having like an eating disorder and anorexia and going incredibly sort of skinny and taking it too far, so it goes too far. And do you find that, because I think the thing is almost like what Pete said earlier, when someone starts exercising and starts training and starts maybe losing weight through diet or whatever, they tend to get quite a lot of positive reinforcement, don't they? Like, people start saying straight away, "Oh God, you look good. Oh, what's happened? What are you doing? Oh, you've lost weight. You're looking really slim, And then they keep kind of, and I know there's got to be something mentally there anyway, because, to tip you down that way. But then it's that kind of constant positive reinforcement of how good they look and how much weight they're losing. And something just kind of goes too far. I don't know.
Yeah, and they take it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people sometimes when they lose, I mean, I've done this like working with people losing weight, they're too scared of going to that fat person again, but they take it too far. So I think there's a lot of people, not even just from an anorexia point of view and nutrition point of view, there's a lot of people what just don't know the middle ground. So it's just not 100%. So they want to train every day. They feel guilty when they have a rest day. So when they have a rest day, for instance, they can't have a rest day because they feel guilty that they're going to go backwards. Or you might find that person who's following a training program, even if they come in the gym on the day and they feel absolutely crap, they feel like they need to still follow the same template and they just don't want to back off. There's a lot of that scared of going back to that person, but really when they've lost the weight and they need to find the middle ground, they need to find moderation into it. It's all about that balance into it. So recovery is just as important as training in the gym into it. And this is what I always say to my members. I always say, you want to treat your training days like you treat your recovery days like your training days. You want to balance it. But then you've got so many diets nowadays. You've got people following this diet, that diet, and it's just, for a lot of people, it's confusing. And then that can change into, oh, well, I'll just cut this out, I'll just cut that out. And then before you know it, they're missing meals. They don't understand what a carbohydrates, a protein, a fat, and they're just cutting certain macronutrients out, and they're just doing one way, and then before you know it, they don't want to eat breakfast every day, and it turns into a full-blown eating disorder.
It's funny actually, because I'm not saying I had any of this, but when I got into training, it was I got made redundant 10 years. It was 10 years ago this month, and then I became a trainer, and then I was like, right, I need to get myself in shape. So what am I, like 72, 73 kilos now. I went down to 9.5 stone, which is like what, 60 kilos, something like that. And I was so skinny. I mean, James, you talked about this in boxing as well, right? I was so skinny. But that was what I thought was the thing to do. And I had a little bit of a six pack, but that was because basically it wasn't strong. I wasn't very strong. I was just super skinny. And I thought that's what, and I had like my jeans, and I was like, look at that, I can pull them out here and everything. Now, and at that point I was running half marathons to lose weight. That was it. And I was just like, I just need to do more and more and more. And now I realize, I mean, it's not necessarily the right or wrong thing to do if you want to run half marathons and stuff, but it was, for me, it was also at a point in my life when like everything was going tits up. So it was like, it was just a way of running away from things as well. But it's kind of, I took it to an extreme, basically. Whereas now, I've got a little bit of flab here and there, but I'm way stronger than I was, and I just feel better. So now I train to just be strong and healthy, pretty much. So I can do, like we were saying, so I can say yes to things and go off and do whatever I want. And I don't really give a toss about what I look like with me top off, and I don't, and all that sort of stuff. But it's quite hard to get to that position. So you look the same, but in your head you look completely different, if you know what I mean. So like now, the way I look now, 10 years ago, I would have thought I was too fat. Whereas now I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. So does that ever go away? So, like if you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic for the rest of your life. You just don't touch booze if you get over it. And that, which you can cut booze out, but you can't cut food out, can you? This is the thing. So this is where it starts to get really complex, doesn't it? So does it ever go away? Or is it something that you have to manage?
I mean, obviously, it's completely different for me nowadays, because obviously I know more about nutrition and performance, and I know I've got a certain thing of like, if I get to a certain weight and I'm overworking and stuff, and I start to drop weight, I'm like, no, I'm not having it. I just don't suit this weight. I'm increasing it. But I'd obviously understand about nutrition, and I know by having more, it's going to help me perform, and it's not going to have a drop. But obviously, the problem is nowadays is you've got people who have that internal battle where they don't really understand nutrition, and they just think, cut this out, cut that out, and then they go back to their always the relapse. So they relapse back to starting point. But I always say when you come out of anorexia, it's like it is always in you. I always say it's like a thing inside you, like a bit more like a possession, shall we say? I want to say it that way, but it's just controlling it. So it's controlling it and understanding of what you're doing and having that balance. And then when you feel yourself getting a little bit, those guilty feelings creeping back in because you're having this and you're having that, it's understanding that it's being relaxed about it. And this is the issue. What people have is nowadays they have like a chocolate bar, instead of getting a little bit of issue with food, they have a chocolate bar. They feel so guilty. The next day they have to go out and run loads and train in the gym 3 hours, and to feel like they feel so guilty of burning that chocolate bar off. And it's having a balance. Remember, it's having a healthy relationship with food. So there's nothing wrong with having a chocolate bar. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of treats every now and then. It's natural. It's the way. And then you get some people nowadays who, I mean, I can't tell you how many trainers I've worked with who have really bad associations with food. So really strict regimes.
Yeah, we had Matt Shaw on the other week, and we had quite a big conversation around this, and then we kind of talked about it a couple of episodes ago, where he's always been a very performance-based trainer, and like a mountaineering and outdoors and hiking and strength training and stuff like that. And he went down the route of setting himself like a purely aesthetic goal to kind of get ready for a photo shoot and to be as ripped and shredded and waxed and all the rest of it to look great for this photo shoot. And he was very honest. He said that 2 weeks before the photo shoot, he kind of didn't feel good, and he knew it wasn't right for him, and he kind of noticed that he was changing, like I suppose, like you say, that initial early awareness of becoming kind of obsessed with how he looked, and always looking in the mirror, and always getting on the scale, and always saying, oh, I need to lose a bit of fat here, and all the rest of it. And he didn't like, he could feel himself going down that path. And as soon as he did go to the end and do the photo shoot, and as soon as he did that, he said, I'm not doing that again, because he could feel himself changing, mentally, and he didn't like what he was becoming, and he didn't feel it was healthy. So we've spoke about this a few times recently, actually, and I can see how, and I think the whole kind of probably the fitness industry and the social media around the fitness industry, and the whole, I don't watch it, but Love Island and bloody influencers and all the rest of it kind of can feed into this insecurity and this false ideas of perfectionism, I suppose, which especially, and you say 12, 13, 14-year-old girls and boys who are just on TikTok like all the day seeing this sort of stuff. It's dangerous, isn't it, really?
I mean, obviously when I developed it, I obviously I know your energy levels are going, what you're doing is wrong, but you just don't want to change. And then obviously as I got into the last year's high school, it was just the energy. Your energy is just completely rock bottom. I mean, I remember in science class, the teacher took my temperature, and obviously my temperature was really low, and that's where the parents got called into school. And obviously that got diagnosed from there. But you just know you're breaking down. You know you're breaking down. You know what you're doing is wrong. But it's like you just don't want to change. I see this with the young girl I got at the minute. When she come through the door, she didn't want to change, but then she started making little changes in the right direction now. But you've got to. It's like we get people who are big coming to us and they're trying to lose weight, but they just feel like they have to food prep all week. They feel like they have to train 6 days a week. They feel like they have to do this. And it's saying, whoever ever told you have to do that? It's just getting that person in and understanding that we're eating for health, and it's all about food quality. Obviously, nutrition quality first, keeping energy high. And then as we get into it, if that person is a larger guy or a larger girl, then it's about maybe portion control, but it's not being so strict on them that it's telling them to eat just broccoli and chicken, and you can't eat this, you can't eat that. It is finding that balance, isn't it? And I think this is the problem nowadays. You get so many people in the industry what feel like they have to adhere to these principles. And it's obviously you're looking at social media nowadays, and it's not just eating disorder, it's a lot of other things like your performance in drugs. You've got a lot of that going on nowadays. And I can't tell you how many kids who I've come across recently at the age of 16, 17 who are taking stuff like that. It's just crazy.
So last week, we told you before we recorded, didn't we? Last week we had Dan, John, and Phil Maffetone on. Last 2 weeks, so there was no pressure on you to. But it was funny because Dan, like, they've obviously been in the game for 40, 50 years. Like, they've been in the game nearly 100 years between them, right? And I was talking to someone the other day about this, and it's like basically nutrition is like training, right? There's lots and lots of different ways of training. We know that it's quite tricky, but you put the maths, the numbers together on it, especially on weights, or even on like running and heart rate and all that. The numbers tell you certain things, and you can work off that on the maths and make it work. Nutrition isn't as hard as everyone thinks it is it? But it just if you Google it, it's an absolute nightmare. So Dan was really interesting because he said, like, do 352, like strength train 3 times a week, 52 weeks of the year, and just do that. On the other days, have those days like stretching, walking, a bit of mobility here and there and all that. And then for food, he was like, eat plenty of protein, eat a certain amount of calories, and that's it, and just do that. And then he was like, and he was talking about like, different type, like fermented foods and
fresh
like
fruit, fresh vegetables, drink loads of water, just all the basics, wasn't it?
Drink water, get some sleep, eat lots of colours, and that's pretty much it, isn't it? And it's like, but you can't sell that, right? That's the problem. I keep saying that you can't sell that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But
it's the basics work. I mean, and like diets nowadays, you get a diet coming out and they have to give it a name. If you just call it the diet book, no one will buy it. But if you called it like something crazy, like people would buy into the system, into it, just by giving it.
Called it the ultimate diet book, it would fly off the shelves.
Yeah. But it's just crazy. But it's just you're creating stability with everyone. It's just finding that middle ground. I mean, the thing is, when someone's getting started, it's getting them through the door. It's looking at nutrition for what it is, having a balanced diet, and then it's building it out from there. I mean, obviously, if they're from a weight loss client and they're not losing weight, then it's a portion game. But then that person can start cutting the portions too low, and then it turns into something else, which we have quite a lot. We have, obviously, I work with people who's lost weight and they're coming in the gym. They can't have a rest day. They're swinging kettlebells every day, and they wonder why their hips hurting because they're doing far too much sets and volume, but then they're not eating properly, they're not recovering properly, and it's a balance, isn't it? But I think you lot can agree nowadays. The industry is like all about 100% full throttle, high intensity this, high intensity that, and it's fine. It's just finding that person to find the middle ground, isn't it, in terms of what they're doing.
That's one of the big things that Phil Maffetone was saying, and Dan when they're both on. Though it was that it's a high intensity kind of mindset at the moment. Like a blasting through things, a no pain no gain, all of that kind of thing. And a far more subtle. I'm listening to one at the moment with Mark Sisson from Primal. Sort of Primal Lifestyle on the Mark Bell Power Project, and he's 70 years old now, and he was like obviously a high level Ironman triathlete along with Brad Kearns and people like that. And he says he walks a lot and he does strength training and he plays like this ultimate frisbee, so so your short sprints and your kind of play and fun and stuff. And he really thinks now that walking and strength training and playing a game and eating sensibly, and he's 70 years old now, is the way forward. And I mean, we bang on about it every week, to be honest, on this podcast. So I think people who listen to this podcast probably hopefully get where we're coming from. But you do sometimes find that you're fighting a losing battle. Do you know what I mean? I suppose, or you're going against the grain of what the majority of people are saying, and it seems what the majority of people want. It's this rather than the one of Dan's saying, long and steady over the long haul. It's like you say, they have a big binge at the weekend, and suddenly they want to, train their asses off and starve themselves for the next 5 days to kind of just get over what happened at the weekend. So we do that all or nothing kind of mentality,
Yeah. I mean, obviously you get that kind of person, but it's making them do it. It's getting them to make the shift, and then they're too scared of making that change. And then when they do make that change, so when, for instance, they go down from having, say, 6, because I deal with runners quite a bit with athletics, so I work with quite a lot of runners. They're pounding the pavements like, say, 5-6 days a week. They're doing far too many miles. And then when you set that person, you need to cut your running down to 3 days a week. And I want you to do these miles. You're doing far too much. And that's why you're getting the back pain and the hip pain. And then before you know it, they're like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then eventually they do it. Some of them don't. Some of them do. And then when they do it, they realize, oh, I actually look leaner. Actually, my strength's going up. My speed's better. And it's like, it's getting that person to understand recovery more. I think far too many gyms nowadays, they just don't work with sleep, recovery. It's things around the sessions, mental stress. It's hand in hand. But obviously, when you give that person, they do follow the recovery protocols and they're having recovery around the sessions, they start to say, oh, look, I feel leaner. I am leaner. And then there's maintaining the muscle tissue more. And I mean, obviously, with anorexia, you've got a large death rate, and it can take a complete turn on the organs, the heart. I mean, obviously, I knew with obviously, what happened with me was when the crux of the matter, before I went in hospital, I went to go to bed one morning and I just could not get out of bed. All my face was swollen. And then obviously because of the damage I put on the heart, I had water retention on my legs just because my body was breaking down. Obviously, the muscles shrink. The heart, it affects the heart and stuff. Obviously, the heart rate lowers due to the body preserving energy and stuff. And obviously, it just affected it from there. But even when I was in hospital for like 8 weeks, and I just didn't want to change. I was telling people I wanted to change. I didn't want to change. And then it is a massive process after that. Once you're in it, they reckon, obviously with anorexia, the first early years of anorexia, you need to get people on the programs straight away in terms of then. You need to get it then. When they've had anorexia and bulimia for a long period, especially over 4 years, they reckon nowadays, it's very hard to get them out of it. It's very hard to get them out of it. And obviously the treatment programs, what the GPs give, nowadays, when someone gets diagnosed with anorexia, it can take up to 6 to 9 months to get them help, and obviously to get them on the program. So there's quite a lot of
Is
waiting
that what it
game.
is? Is that what it is like right now, or is that what it was? Because that's only getting
Well,
longer.
it was. I'm
My,
not sure what it is right this minute. I mean, last time
yeah.
I looked at it, but it is.
No,
It
I
is a
was
big waiting.
just I don't know what it's. I don't know if it's like different for different conditions and stuff. But I've been saying my girlfriend Sean's been in pain with her shoulder since like for 5 or 6 months, and she still hasn't got any. She's been seeing everybody, and she's going to have to get signed off work sick for it because the NHS is just it just
Just
seems to be
physio.
everything's getting longer and longer and longer and longer. She's going to have to go private. The doctor actually told her you'll need to go private because you're not going to get seen. So yeah, I've been talking a lot about that recently. It's really become apparent to me about taking personal responsibility, and I know it's easy to say that to people who are a bit overweight and stuff like that, but someone who's got a condition like anorexia, bulimia, one of those sorts of things, it's much harder to deal with. So yeah, it's very concerning. So it's good that there's people like you out there actually doing what you're doing, so people can be referred to you, so then you can then empathize with people, and then they'll actually listen to you. So yeah.
I was going to say, Matt, do you find that with your personal background and your personal experience, your life experience, in your teens and growing up, does that help you empathize and relate to, all people, I suppose, everyday people who come into the gym, not just the people who are referred to you for, eating disorders and things like that?
Yeah.
You can kind of help see potential pitfalls early, I suppose, and help steer people in the right direction. And I suppose almost head off these potential problems before they surface, because you can see the very early warning signs of if people are kind of slightly going off track.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously, when I was getting into anorexia, I was losing weight. I was wearing baggy clothes to hide it. I remember going into the gym and exercising for like 3 hours at a time. And obviously the fitness instructors at the time didn't say nothing to me at all. They knew I was going through something. They could see that I was underweight. They could see that I was training for far too much, but they never come up to me and said, maybe what you're doing here, mate, is a bit too much and you need to do this, this, and this. They never pull me aside. But yeah, I mean, when people come through the door, if I can spot it a mile off. So certain trades, they might start losing a bit of weight, and then they start saying, "Oh, I'm cutting this out, I'm cutting that out. I've started fasting more," and then it's all because they want to cut the window of eating down more, and then it becomes a bit more of a restrictive regime what they're doing. So not just with that, but it's obviously we get people with who's ex-drug addicts, bipolar, certain things like that. We've got a lad at the minute who's back in the gym, who's very much come from that background. But yeah, you can definitely create more empathy with the person, and I mean that's what it is as a coach, isn't it? It's recognizing, creating a relationship with the person, and understanding that you generally want to help them.
As somebody who's been there and had it, and obviously see people in the gym now, this is interesting because I've seen people, like you're talking about, and you said, the trainers didn't come and say anything to you. I think most people, especially if you're dealing with people who are maybe a little bit older, or women, or just it's quite difficult to kind of, because you might see someone and think, I don't think this is really healthy. There's something not quite right here. But it's very, very delicate kind of conversation to have, isn't it? To actually approach someone and say, and try and even just bring up this in conversation. Is there any kind of, because there's a lot of trainers I know who listen to this, and I'm sure a lot of what you're saying, people who've been in the industry for a little while will recognize. Is there any kind of advice you can give to people if you suspect something, or you've got an inkling that something like this might be going on, how a trainer or a gym owner might deal with it or might approach someone? Because I think that would be really helpful.
It's obviously it's an hard one, isn't it? So you've got to maybe speak to the person just on normal terms first, get to know them, and then maybe get them to speak about. I would just say get to speak about more their exercise routine, the program. maybe they might start saying they're exercising quite a lot, 6 days, 7 days a week. Just get them to open up first to you, and then obviously from there you can't just go guns blazing. I think you've got an eating disorder. You've
Yeah,
got to,
yeah,
you've,
yeah,
you've
yeah.
got to go in and get them to speak to about what they're doing, and maybe you might see that you say, I've just noticed you've come in the gym more and you're training and you've kind of lost a lot of weight recently. Is everything okay? And then it's just resonating with the client really and getting to speak to him, especially in the gym. It is hard though. It is hard because some people will get the back up and they'll know that they've got an eating disorder and they'll probably go the other direction. So you have got to kind of like break it in slowly. But obviously, I would say that's more from a trainer point of view, but definitely from like a mum and dad point of view, having a kid or having especially you could have your partner who's going through anorexia or turning into an eating disorder, shall we say, then you've got to look at the traits. So you've got to look at the things like sudden weight loss, maybe closing themselves off in the bedroom more. Maybe they're coming in and said your young kids going up in the bedroom more. Maybe they're exercising more. You don't know they're doing that. Maybe they started the gym. They started going to the gym a lot more. Maybe when they're eating at the family table, they've decided to cut the carbohydrates out, and it's funny about eating certain foods. You've got to look for the early signs. I mean, obviously, it's not something that comes overnight. I mean, I started to cut carbs out, and then I was overeating too much on meat, and then before you know it, I wouldn't even eat an apple in a day, and then I was hiding food, and then I was over exercising in the bedroom, and it was just a never-ending shitstorm of just it just snowballed into something completely else, and it's crazy when you're fully in anorexia, you don't think the same. You think everyone's lying to you. You look at your body differently, and it's crazy. You just feel like you're not going to get help. And obviously, when I was speaking to doctors and counsellors, I'll be honest with you, the support wasn't brilliant. The support was not brilliant at all. And it took time to come out of it. But it is hard. I mean, as a coach, there's no. I would love to stand here and say there is a magical remedy to do it, but there's not. You've just got to go over and just resonate with that person, speak to them in the gym, and then maybe get them talking about it. I mean, maybe if they start saying that they're doing crazy amounts of sets and you've seen the losing weight, I would say that your job as an health coach is to help that person's health into it. So it's not just to take the money and let them go in the gym, which some commercial clubs especially probably will do. They'll probably just take your money and let you carry on going and just carry on losing weight. And even though you look really unhealthy, but I think most coaches should kind of step in more. And if you know something's happening with that person, you should try and speak to that person.
No, that's great. I think this is we've actually, this is like Pete said, this is episode 164, and it's the first time I think it's the first time we've really discussed this topic, certainly at this length, isn't it, Pete? First
Absolutely,
time it's really interesting and really helpful. And especially to have someone like yourself, Matt, talk to us, who is someone who's been through it themselves. So you're talking from an experiential point of view, and also as a trainer and someone working with people now. It's been really interesting, to kind of get to hear about it. It's fantastic.
I was going to say one of the traits I remember was like watching out for whoever it is going to the toilet after dinner, like immediately after dinner. I'll be back in a minute, and and it was like that would happen in restaurants everywhere, and I was just like, this. I wasn't really aware of it, but then I started to notice it once I knew, and I was like, this is happening every single bloody time. And then the other thing that happened was meat boxes started turning up, as in, instead of going and getting your meat from the butchers and stuff like that, I don't know where they came from, but I don't even know if they still happen. But it was because I don't look at that anymore. But it was these meat boxes started turning up with like super lean, 3% fat meat that you could only you bought from a website, and the box turned up, and basically as soon as you put it in the pan, it just went dry, and I was like, this is getting a bit silly. This is like, no, I can't eat any fat, and I can't eat it. I was just like, it was one of those things. I had to actually ring it. I didn't know how to deal with it. I had to ring a helpline to say, how do I talk to this person? Because I don't, like you said, you can't just go up and go, stop it. You know, and it was like, how do I talk to this person who I was in a relationship with? And I was like, I don't know how to approach this. I'd love to be able to, but I don't want to make it worse. That was the big problem. So I rang the Beat helpline, and they were really helpful. Actually, they
Yeah,
just
Beat's great.
yeah.
What does beat? Is that like an acronym for something? What's that?
Beat eating, what is it? Beat eating disorders, or I don't know what the
Yeah,
acronyms, but it's beat
Yeah.
eating
Okay.
disorders. Yeah, they're really
Yeah.
good. I mean, obviously you've got Beat now. Beat's massive. You've got the Priory. Obviously, private's more private.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the NHS, the typical go to your GP, speak to your GP. It takes the time to diagnose it, and they very much underdiagnose it nowadays. So obviously they catch it later, and then by then the eating disorders taken toll, and they've had it for quite a while. But like I said, there's a lot involved. It could be emotions. The person could be a trigger. A friend could say it. A kid could say it to them at school, or a family member. I've had a girl who lost quite a lot of weight, and then the family members started kind of turning on them more because of jealousy and things like that. So it is crazy of how it can trigger certain things. But
yeah,
bulimia is very hard. I mean, bulimia is obviously where you over-exercise and you're making yourself sick. I mean, that is anorexia is the higher death rate in anorexia, but bulimia, obviously bulimia and anorexia are very high as well. But like I said, it could start off on an eating disorder trait of binge eating disorder. So that person starts to cut down on one meal and then they don't want to eat that meal anymore because they've started to lose weight. And then before you know it, they're cutting out on two meals and then they're exercising 5 days a week, and then before you know it, it just snowballs into something else. It's an hard one. So, Pete, how did you just to cover that subject? How did the person you know obviously get help?
yes, but I don't think it worked.
Right.
They went to a counsellor because I'd rang Beat, and then I said, "Look, I know about this now," and Beat had said, just be gentle and all of that sort of stuff. So it was like we chatted about it, and I was like, I think you need to go and see someone. I want to help, but I'm not qualified to help. I think you should go to see somebody. They got signed off work. I think she told her dad, but not her mum because they were split up. So she told her dad, and he cried and all this sort of stuff. And she was signed off work, and they spent a couple of days together, and just for a bit of support and stuff like that. And then she went to see a counsellor, but and then the relationship ended soon, like not long after that. Was it not long after that? Well, it was good. No, it was probably a few years after that, to be honest. But I don't think it was ever resolved, which was part of the problem why the relationship ended. And it was like, well, but this had been going on since school, so this was like, you're talking 20 years. So it was properly taken hold, and it was horrible to watch. It was really horrible to watch, to be honest. And I mean, this was the other thing as well, because like, you talk about the person who's going through it, and I'm not saying, oh, woe is me or anything like that, but then it affects family and friends
100%,
who then
yeah.
see these things and they're like, I want to help, but I don't know what the hell to do. So it's really yeah.
It's normally the people. I mean, it's not just the person who's going through it. It's the person it affects, into it, around you, your family members,
Yeah.
your mum, your dad, you whatever you release. It's crazy. I mean, obviously, I look back and I mean, there's a lot of years that you have guilt of like, oh God, what did I put my mum and dad through? And my brother saw things and this, that, and the other. And it is embarrassing. I mean, there was years where I just didn't speak about it. And even doing this now, it's a little bit uncomfortable touching things, even though I've spoken openly to clients. Obviously, I'm on a podcast now speaking about it. But it does take people speaking out about it more. And there is good trainers what I've been through it as well. I'm not just the only one. There's trainers what have had obesity and they've lost weight, and then they're coaching people with obesity. There's trainers what have had anorexia, but it is hard on the people. I mean, sometimes I don't think they help the people what are with the people what are going through the eating disorders. They need support as well.
Yeah.
And it is hard on everyone. But
I had a friend whose daughter was an addict. It wasn't an eating disorder. She was addicted to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And there was one of my clients who was an addict. I think he actually knew the daughter through something, which you're not allowed to talk about. But he recommended a book. I can't remember the name of the book now, but it was for it was for like carers or family members or whatever of recovering addicts, because obviously they end up with some sort of mental health problem, thinking it's them that's done it, or they're enabling the addict without knowing it and stuff like that. So it's like you say, there's this massive ripple effect. And it's like, well, who's helping those people? And it's like there are avenues to help those people as well. But yeah, it's amazing how big a web it creates. It's like I always talk about this, about like telling the truth. If you tell a little white lie, then you need to then tell another one somewhere down the line to back that one up and all that, and you end up with this web everywhere rather than just telling the truth at the beginning. Then you don't need to worry about it, and there's no mental stress and stuff like that. So it's a similar sort of thing to that, I think, in my head anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worrying because obviously it is on the rise more, and obviously I've got 2 daughters now, and I worry about them as well. It's like, obviously, hopefully I can spot things in them if they started doing certain things, obviously, but it is worrying. It is worrying in terms of like, if they was to get it, and obviously the pressure on body image nowadays. I mean, I've got a daughter who does gymnastics myself. She's 7 years old, and sometimes I've caught her like, even though she's slim, she's holding her stomach sometimes, looking at her stomach, and it's kind of like pinching it and grabbing it, and you start to worry, thinking like, are you okay there? Are you, like if she's thinking something else, and then it is worrying nowadays. But obviously, yeah, I've had clients who's got as the kids who are getting bullied at school, and that can develop into an eating disorder as well, because they start to feel like they need to do something, so they start to maybe getting bullied because they're a bit overweight, so they turn that into an eating disorder. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I really like you said. It's still quite. I we really appreciate you coming on, actually, because you said, like, it's still a bit uncomfortable to talk about. But what's great is that you are, because if you've overcome it, and you're in the business of helping people overcome it as well, but still find it tough to talk about, that's really telling, because the people who are going through it will find it even harder to talk about, right? So we really appreciate you coming on. It's it's just amazing. So where will people be able to, well, assuming you want people to get in touch with you, where, because we all say, oh, where can people get in touch with you? And all of a sudden you have all these people at you like, what do I do? What do I do? Or I've got a friend, how do I help them?
Obviously, I mean, obviously, I've spoke about anorexia and stuff, and I spoke about a lot of people I help with anorexia. But obviously, I do have a gym, and obviously, I have a personal training gym, Evolve Fitness and Performance in Bury, Manchester. But like I say, I'm not just known as just helping people with anorexia. We do have people in the gym who, like, obviously, I've done Strong First before. I come from strength and conditioning. I do a lot of strength and conditioning on the side, sport specific, one-to-ones. We do small group personal training in the gym. And obviously that delivers a lot with like kettlebell coaching, kettlebell workshops and stuff like that as well. So I kind of go down that route as well. So I'm not just known as just the guy who works with people with anorexia, but I'm also known as a strength and conditioning coach as well, which I've not really talked about much on training as well, which I've got a big passion on.
No, I know. Do you know what? Like, as we were going on, I was like, right, then we need to steer this conversation somewhere else. But actually, it just kept flowing. So
we'll have to get Matt back on, won't we? We'll get Matt back on again.
That's what I was. If you're,
I mean, it sounds thingy sometimes, because we spoke about anorexia and that, and it sounds very down and very negative, and you feel a bit like depressive talking about it. And it is, because it's a dark subject, but maybe we should get me on and completely lighten it up. Talk about kettlebells or something.
We'll have a right laugh. No, well, this is the thing, right? And I feel like I used to feel like this, actually. And I used to laugh everything off and all of this sort of stuff. But it's like, when you need to go there, and people need to hear it, right? So like,
people tend to, let's see, when people tend to meet, but they'll kind of say, oh, when I first met you, I thought he was a bit serious, but actually you're all right. You've got a pretty good sense of humor.
Exactly. But this is the thing, though. When the episodes that we do on this, the kind of, some of them go, we've done episodes on menopause and stuff like that, and some of them go a bit dark, and then some don't, So it's a good mix, but it's.
So Alex said to me, because when I was going to Alex, he said, I'll give you like a bit of a few questions to think of before you go on it, and he said, like, the Americans always like a bit of a low at the beginning, and then bring it up at the end like you come out. So I was like, all right. I'll just.
What we'll do, well, if you're up for it, we'll get you back on definitely, and then, like I say, we're gonna have a right laugh.
Talk about let's talk about kettlebells and talk about strong first and touch about maybe some strength stuff and
Well, I think that this
I
is
know-
really valuable because, like I say, in 164 episodes, we've never really talked about it before. It may have been mentioned, but we've certainly never gone anywhere near into the depth and had someone, talk so candidly and openly and honestly about it. So I think it's great. And we just don't know. We had, it reminds me when we had Chris Branch on, who's an osteopath, and we could have gone anywhere. And we just went, he was training for this ultra run. And we just kind of, the whole episode, we just went in on that. And that was great. So sometimes you don't know where you're going to go with conversations, but I think this will be a valuable episode. And maybe Pete, I don't know if in the notes or whatever, can you put in like a link for Beat or like some of those sort of things?
Or if Matt, if you know any, just send us a few links.
I will. I'll send you a couple of things over.
So if people are, people themselves might be dealing with this sort of thing, or suspect, friends or family or clients somewhere that people can go for more information and help, that would be absolutely brilliant.
I've got a request, James, as well. If you write the synopsis, can you write it out and then say, oh, by the way, we'll have a bit of a laugh at the end. Stick with it. Yeah. Stick with it.
Peak at the end.
Dear me. No, that's great. That's absolutely brilliant.
No, that's cool. So thanks for coming on. James, have you got any?
Cheers, Pete. Cheers, James.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. And cheers, Paul, as well. I think he's still sitting there.
Yeah, cheers, Paul. He's not been so much. I've not been that boring, have I, Paul?
The internet was cutting in and out, and I thought as soon as I internet was going to cut out, so I thought rather than just disrupting.
No worries.
No, that was just really good. And like I say, I do follow Matt on Instagram, and
I need to get. I could do with getting down to your gym, James, having a look at it.
At some stage. I mean, I'm up at Telford next weekend at the Liddershall, assisting at the Strong First up there. But anytime if you ever come down to the sort of south of the country and that, you're always more than welcome to come down. That'd be fantastic. But no, it's just been a good conversation. Like I say, I follow you online anyway. We're connected on Facebook and Instagram, but it's always good to spend time talking. So thanks so much for coming on.
No worries. Cheers, James. Thank you.
Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you, no worries. Right then, so that was episode 164. Please give us a like and share. Tell your friends. If you know anyone who's struggling with anything, I sound like I'm on the BBC now, don't I? If you know anyone who's struggling with any of these problems, then there'll be links in the show notes to go to. And then do we know who we got on next week?
I think the next episode will be Ollie Mel.
Ollie Mel
from Wolfpack up in East Chester, I think. Chester way near Liverpool. Yeah.
Okay, so the next episode will be Ollie Mel. Like I say, please give us a like and share, leave a review. Join the Facebook group. You just look for us on Health Oddity on Facebook, and we will be there. We'll let you in. One of us gatekeepers will let you in. And we will see you on the next one with Ollie Mel. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favourite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.